Gamers, what did a game do to make you quit completely? I have a few. Minecraft. I was working on a huge redstone contraption, and I mean huge. This thing took me at least 2 months to design and make. And I did it all in glowstone because that's how all redstone machines were made at the time. And then there was an update that made putting redstone on glowstone impossible. All the redstone on the ground turned into the item. Now, this wouldn't have been so enraging if it weren't for the sheer size of the machine, meaning that every item dropped from the redstone lagged my computer to all hell. I couldn't open that save without putting my computer into an existential crisis and playing with negative FPS. I haven't worked on redstone since. Assassin's Creed II. I got his flashback and chased some dude up this tower, and for the life of me, I could not figure out how to climb the tower. There was this lantern pole hanging off the side, and every time I tried to grab onto it, he would freaking jump off the tower. I didn't play for months, and when I finally went back to it, I did it on my first try. I don't play a lot of video games anymore, so if something gets too confusing or difficult, I normally quit and just watch The Office instead. I don't want to feel frustrated when I get home after a long day. Fallout 4. I was on the final level underground in the Institute. I leave my super old son and I run to the exit as the whole facility is about to self-destruct, all the while getting massacred by synths. After ending many times trying to cross the pristine facility to get to the exit and spawning back at my departing son, I made it to the exit with about 4 HP left. I go through the door and appear in a room that is literally just the door I came in and another one in front of me that is 5 meters away. I go through it and realize this isn't the exit. It's a room with 10 cents and a computer that I never found the use of because when I took 5 steps forward, I always croaked. I go back the other way and when I enter the facility again, I get ended by 700,000 cents before the game even loads. This happens again and again and again. And then I realized I couldn't even pause the game. Turn off my PS4 and go back into the game. I expire in the exact same spot before the game loads. I quit Fallout 4 because it's literally impossible for me to do anything unless I restart the whole game. Oh well. Final Fantasy IX. Disc 3 of the game had a bug or something, and every one of them that they made in that batch was all like that. You were in this mine, you climbed up a ladder, and the game would freeze. I want to say your save was ruined too because I remember getting another copy, playing all the way through to that same spot, and the same thing happened. I said, screw this game. I didn't try again. Fairly recently, I bought a used PS1 and a box of games that included Final Fantasy IX, and I will be damned if I don't play all the way through, and the same thing happened when I hit that ladder. Frick that game. I don't want to beat it. Story 2. I played a hardcore Sandbox MMO for many years known as Mortal Online. I was a very active member of the community, made a YouTube series about it, and even wrote several guides for the game, totaling somewhere over 500,000 views. In a game like this, it is possible to build and destroy empires, and consequently thousands of man-hours of playtime. This naturally leads people to be petty and generally pretty pissed off at you if you have any sort of political leaning in-game. I had a lot of political leanings in that game. Well, some of the players on the opposing side of the game are forum moderators and released my wife's, GF at the time, and my personal information to other players. Push comes to shove and my forum account is eventually permabanned to censor me. This entire scandal wasn't even known to the actual developers, as the forum mods were all hush-hush about it. A couple of weeks later, I got contacted by the CEO of the game, asking what happened. Later on, one of their GMs completed an internal investigation after they got wind of what happened and determined that foul play did in fact occur. But even then, they couldn't do much about it. He was probably mostly covering himself since what happened violated several EU laws. I won't touch that game with a 200-foot pole again. I'm not as angry as I am disappointed. For context, politics means in-game politics. There were many alliances over the course of the life of the game. As many have pointed out, I was the leader of one of the biggest guilds in the history of the game. One of our knacks was to roleplay as revolutionaries, and we made propaganda-style films to discredit and joke at our enemies. This obviously ticked off others and naturally made us some enemies. We did stuff like this for years and had a really notorious reputation. Story 3. When I was like 10 years old, I used to be obsessed with Final Fantasy XI. I shared an account with my younger brother and far surpassed him because of the sheer amount of time I spent playing. One day the game glitches and all my expensive weapons and armor are totally gone. My character was just bare. I'd worked so hard that I actually cried. Alas, I ended up working just as hard again and getting everything back in a couple of months. Then the same thing happened again, so I rage quit forever. Recently, I was talking to my fiancé about how I love this game and what happened, and he said, "There's no way that's what happened. Your brother totally stole all your stuff." And I was like, "No way he would have done that." So I texted him and asked. He replied, "Yes, I'm sorry I was a bastard. It's still all on my account if you want to go back and play it." I still have yet to go back. I spent 15-ish years thinking the game had just glitched. That is one hell of a younger brother's prank. I wonder if she's going to mention that in her best woman speech one day. Story 4. I stopped playing Elite Dangerous when the last patch, multi-crew, hit. Frontier doesn't seem to give a hoot about putting any thought into their content and they just churn out the bare minimum of what they promised in Horizons. Not only do they do the bare minimum, but they take ages to do it. I've never seen a studio like Frontier take so much time to put out an update that is content light, unbalanced, speaking of engineers here, and unfun. Things like CQC were poorly thought out. Who wants to play a subgame within a game? Planets are cool, but there's so little that you can actually find or do on them. Engineers was a cool concept, but horribly gritty and imbalanced. And multi-crew was the nail in the coffin. There are so many ways that they could have made it better, but instead, it's the bare minimum. One person flies like normal, one person gets to control turrets, which have been by far the worst weapon mount in the game since the beginning, and one person gets to fly a fighter that can only be deployed from a few ships. There are no special abilities that the different positions have, and both crew positions are useless if your loadout doesn't include fighters or turrets. Having a crew adds literally nothing to your ship's capabilities. I used to enjoy Elite and played it a lot, but it seems that the developers have stopped doing anything meaningful with it. I guess I'll have to hope that Star Citizen doesn't flop. Story 5. I was once playing MMOG, revolving around building cities and expanding your empire. The game was called Travian. Approximately 20,000 players were playing the game on a single server. I was playing the game as a robber with a strong alliance having my back. I controlled all of my troop movements from my capital, so the troops ate way more food than capital produced. On this server, I was the second or third best robber for an extended period of time, so you can imagine how big my army was. The problems with my vast army came at night. Before going to sleep, I had to adjust all the troop movements so that enough food was available for them to eat. Some troops had to arrive in 20 minutes, 40 minutes, or 60 minutes, or my army would starve. Because I had to go to school during this time, I always had to adjust huge troop movements in the morning and before going to sleep. It was way too much work for my teenage mind, so I stopped doing it after several weeks. I asked my alliance members if I could park my troops in their cities. In the end, I attacked a huge defense force of an enemy of my alliance and never entered the game again. Story 6. The Sandbox game I really liked had a mechanic where, if you got hit, it would shake the screen. I've never gotten motion sick because of a game before, but this shaking would cause me motion sickness. It was reported to the game developers, who promised to put an option in the settings to turn off the shaking by a certain date. That date came and went. A month after that date, it was asked why the option was still not available, and the reply was that in PvP, turning off the screen shake would allow the PvPer to continue aiming at the other player, and it would allow experienced players to take advantage of the mechanic to gank lower-level players who were unaware of the setting. This could easily have been made a server option, or they could have changed the mechanic to make the crosshair shake around, but no. They valued PvP over the literal health of some of their players. I immediately uninstalled the game and will never purchase anything from that developer again. Story 7. In Red Dead Redemption, I tried to keep that white horse that you captured at the beginning of the game for as long as I possibly could. After completing about 85% of the game, I was riding down a steep and curvy mountain or cliff when a wolf, coyote, or whatever attacked my horse, and it fell off the mountain to its death. After not playing for a few weeks because of this, a friend wanted to play online together. He told me he wanted to show me something in the game. After about 40 minutes of riding up a mountain, he tells me to stop and look at something in the distance. He proceeds to knock me off the cliff and I fall to my death. I sold the game to GameStop for about $11. He really missed out because the ending of RDR is fantastic. That friend is a jerk in the most comedic way possible. Story 8. I got into Overwatch pretty late as I was tired of FES games and the beta didn't impress me. Then I played during a free weekend and had a really good time, so I bought the game. I ended up really enjoying the game until I played a competitive match and had a guy named Delta berate me the entire game to the point where the game was no longer fun. It completely took the wind out of my enjoyment of the game. I've logged in only a couple of times to check out the last couple of events. The thing is, in competitive matches, you drop your team after each match, so you're always paired with new players. Why he got so insanely mad is beyond me. Furthermore, the game is designed to give you around a 50% win rate, so you're never going to win every game. Losing is a part of playing. But yeah, I don't play the game anymore because of him. Games that create a toxic environment are no longer fun. I have no time for that in my life. Story 9. Combat Arms. At launch, it was a game that promised never to give people paid in-game advantages that you can't if you play for free. A year later, they added these characters with unique OP weapons you could only realistically get by paying. Sure, you could get them for free, but you would need to play something like 8 hours a day every day at the rate I got in-game currency. And you needed to be at an absurd rank I had not reached despite sinking ridiculous amounts of time into the game. I largely stopped playing after that. I did stop occasionally, but it wasn't fun. Between that awful lag and the rampant hackers, look up OP King and Combat Arms, it just wasn't as fun. But what really ended it for me was basically going de facto pay to win. Story 10. My girlfriend and I were avid Pokemon Go players for around 4 months following the release. It was a ton of fun, but my frustrations accumulated due to bad servers, low spawn and capture rates, how grindy it was, spoofers, etc. Things came to a head when one day I was driving down the road and she said there's an Alakazam coming up. I pull over and she catches it within 30 seconds. I pull out my phone, open the app, and it freezes. I waited for a minute or so, then finally restarted my phone, and of course, By the time the damn app opened, the Alakazam had despawned. That was the first time I had seen something that wasn't a Rattata, Pidgey, Bellsprout, Nidoran in about a week. I had installed it later that day, haven't played it again, and never intend to. Almost catching and definitely missing a rare Pokemon just because of app crashes? I quit too. Don't be like this guy. Like and subscribe so you won't miss a chance for more upcoming stories like these. Story 11. RuneScape. Approximately 10 years ago, I finally got myself all rune armor, rune scimitar, rune shield, rune two-handed sword, and money. I was decked out in my mind, and it took forever. I decided to try my hands in the war zone or whatever the PvP area was called. I formed a group with these two dudes, went on a killing spree with them for a couple of hours and went so far in. I got some great loot, but I also developed a bond with them. It was time for me to go to bed, so I said, "Alright guys, it was fun. Nice playing with you both." They said, "Wait, so you're leaving?" To which I replied, "Yes." And right then and there, they both turned on me, to my horror, ended me on the spot and stripped me of every last bit of money and newly acquired rune equipment I had. I was devastated. I turned off my computer and have never returned to RuneScape since. This sounds like the most brutal story compared to the rest. Never should have gone to the wilderness. Story 12. Star Wars Galaxies used to be an incredibly freeform MMO, where you could build your character more or less the way you wanted. If you used the laser rifle a lot, you would gain skills and abilities with the rifles. If you did a lot of tailoring, you'd become a better tailor. If you did martial arts, you'd be better at that. You could even be a mad scientist and train or grow creatures to be your fighting companions. You could more or less freely build your character to whatever strengths you wanted. Each character also had a hidden set of skills marked in character creation as triggers to become a Jedi. Players didn't know which skills they had to master, but if you happened to do so, you would very slowly start the path to becoming a Jedi, if you wanted to walk it. Jedi were immensely powerful, far outclassing other characters in 1v1 fights. The catch, however, was that Jedi had permadeath turned on. In addition, if you used powers or whipped out your lightsaber in front of, say, a patrol of stormtroopers or Imperial-aligned players, you would be marked for a bounty, and if it was big enough, bounty hunters, other players who specialized in the skill tree, would be able to hunt you down via probes and attempt to kill you for the money. So Jedi became like the new hope, hiding, using their powers in select situations to turn the tide, and so on. They were an invisible force. Then the publisher and developer, Sony Online Entertainment, decided the game would be more like World of Warcraft. Sony implemented the new game enhancements, or NGE, that removed skill trees completely. Instead, you could choose between 9 classes with pre-selected skill trees. There was no more differentiation between characters. All classes had the exact same skill set. Smuggler, Commando, Medic, Bounty Hunter, Spy, Officer, a buff class, Trader, Entertainers. These 2 classes simply could not fight, whereas before you could be a Trader or Entertainer and also learn to use a weapon effectively. Last but not least, Jedi. They removed the Jedi bounty system entirely, and most of the player base selected Jedi as their starter class. Cities were full of level 1 Jedi running around with lightsabers. Forums were alight with cries of "Jedi so weak this does not feel like the movies." As so we buffed Jedi to be the strongest class in the game, with the most damage, the strongest heals, and the best tankiness, further pushing everyone to play Jedi. In the end, a game that let you freely build your character opted to instead railroad you and throw out the immersive mystery that the Jedi had in the process. People left in droves after the NGE, including me, and the game is no longer available now. It is a pity since it was almost a sandbox. You could even build houses anywhere you chose. Every item in the game had a 3D model that could be used for decoration, so even vendor trash had some value as furniture, etc. It was brilliant, and they absolutely destroyed it. Story 13. Payday II. I probably only have to say the name of the game for people who've heard of it to understand why I stopped playing it. In order to get content updates when they came out, I basically ended up paying for the game 6 or 7 times over because all the updates were premium DLC. It got to the point where DLC was being pushed out every month or every other month, and I just gave up. The microtransactions for special weapons were a pain too. All this, and they never addressed any major bugs in the game. I've been advised if I ever return that there's a mod that I should install to improve online communications that prevents desync. There's a mod that fixes a major issue in the game that's been present for years. Also, when Mass Effect Andromeda made the game a drive here, drive there semi-open world game, I loved the combat of Andromeda. I thought it was fun, don't get me wrong, but I got so bored of driving from checkpoint to checkpoint and wanting to do side quests only to get the blips off my screen instead of feeling like, oh, this side quest matters. Personally, I think BioWare should stop making the Dragon Age and Mass Effect games semi-open worlds. Either go full-on open world or stick to the formulas from the first few, where it was small areas filled with tons of fantastic content, not huge areas with little content. Story 14. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor for PS3 was buggy beyond belief. It was, without a doubt, the most buggy game of all time. Terrible graphics, awful FPS, bugs everywhere, freezing, screen tearing, it was awful. I had to restart it about 5 times. Then I had to hard restart my console. I checked the playtime, which was 20 minutes. You heard the term literally unplayable thrown around a lot, but this game was literally unplayable. You could not play it for more than 2 minutes without a game-breaking bug. I never played it again. If a game ever freezes completely and makes me hard reset my console, it's over. I can understand glitches to a certain extent, but that's unforgivable. In my opinion, you shouldn't have any more than one in an entire playthrough if you don't have any other bugs. For clarification though, it's an amazing game on PS4. One of my favorite games, with no problems whatsoever. The PS3 version was just a money grab port that never should have happened. That console just could not handle it. IIRC, the 360 port, is just as bad. Story 15. Right when Diablo 3 came out, I was playing hardcore mode with a barbarian. I got all the way to heaven and was clearing trash mobs to get to the last half of my XP bar for max level. I randomly disconnected from the server. No loss of internet connection and no game crash, and when I logged back in, a trash mob had ended my character. I called Blizzard and they said it was a reported problem they were trying to fix. I couldn't get my tune back and just rage quit. Good game, but after wasting all that time in hardcore mode and coming so close to being one of the first people to down Diablo and bite the dust from nothing that was my fault, it really turned me off from the game. I guess the secret to playing hardcore is to be casual enough to not give a crap. Story 16. Not what a game did, but I brought my PS2 memory card to a friend's home to show my achievements, especially in Gran Turismo. I had millions of GTs that I and my bro made for months before he moved abroad. They were impressed and I let them buy whatever they wanted. I left my card and the next time I saw the guy at work, I asked for my card, offering that he could just copy my save to one of his cards. He said, "Nah man, my roommate and I just decided to delete the file. We think it's not fair to us to start playing the game with so many cars and money." I was really pissed, but I felt everybody would make fun of me at work if I made a big deal. I just stopped playing PS2 completely. It still makes me upset when I think about it. Thanks for watching, fellow gamers. If you've enjoyed hearing about games that made gamers quit, you won't want to miss Gamers. What are the strangest things you've heard on an open mic? Story 1 is too relatable. See you there.